Ultimately, the goal for me is never change. It is to be able to wake up every single morning and choose what I want to do that day and then go do that. And I've never been as close as I am than right now. And there's times where like for weeks or months, sometimes at a time, that's like my life. I just want to design a life where that's like in perpetuity for the rest of it. I'm One Take Blake.
Is that what they call you?
Yes. What's up, guys? Blake Jamieson here. We're in my studio in Brooklyn, New York. I'm here with Tops. This is Project 70, Meet the Artist. So I was born in San Francisco, grew up just north of San Francisco in Marin County. We had season tickets to the Oakland A's, 1985, which is the year I was born, until 1989. And so I don't remember a lot of those games, but like I grew up at the Coliseum. I remember like before I could read, I could identify the team logos and stuff. And so my dad would like take me to card shops and I'd be like pointing and be like, Astros, A's, like just pointing at all the different teams. And it was just because I knew what the picture was. And then we moved to Florida, Sarasota, Florida for like 10 years. As a kid, I grew up there and we went to a lot of spring training. So it was like Texas Rangers, White Sox. But yeah, baseball was like a huge part of my childhood.
Any players that right from the start, you're your kind of first favorites?
Yeah, so like I remember we went to this like fantasy camp and Brooks Robinson, who was retired at that point, but he was like one of the instructors. He like took a liking to me, and so I had like that interaction with him as a kid, and we ended up driving him home from spring training back to his hotel, which he was staying very close to where we lived. And I was in the back seat like with his bag and just like digging through his bag. My dad was like super embarrassed and I'm like pulling shit out. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm looking for the magic glove. So it's kind of cool like having like moments with legends like that. Bobby Valentine was at the same camp, met him, and that's like why those guys have ended up in Project 70 for me. Mark McGwire was like my first like childhood hero. We watched him like through the minors when he played on Team USA and then got called up to the majors and played for Oakland for a long time. Followed him, and then even when we like moved from Florida back to California, I was 14 at the time. My dad and I did a road trip across the country and we stopped at different stadiums, and so we got to see Mark play in St. Louis. So many baseball games as a kid. Art was definitely a huge part of my childhood. I was like drawing pictures and designing costumes. My dad has a framed picture of like a Robin Hood costume that I had like detailed out, like everything that I need, a quiver and a cloak. And so I was definitely drawing, but sometime between then and when I decided to like explore professional career options, art was not even on the radar at that time. The digital marketing landscape I ended up in was a space that allowed me to be creative in ways to create marketing collateral and assets for clients that needed graphic design or video editing or any type of creativity. So I think for a long time that filled the void of being drawn to that kind of thing. But I did that for 8 years and it kind of got to a point where like it wasn't challenging anymore and it just felt like a job. I didn't plan to leave digital marketing and start painting full-time or even do anything in the arts full-time. It was just that I knew I had to get out of there and do something else that like made me really happy every single day. Action.
To people not familiar with your work, how do you explain your style?
Oh, depends who I'm talking to. Pop art portraits of athletes is the most concise way. And I think like when people hear pop art, they think like bright colors. And colors is like a big part of what I do. I think I'm always drawn to pinks, orange, yellow, like just bright like neons.
Is Mac the only player you did last year that we're gonna know?
That's a great question. I don't know.
So what's the approach then with this Mac? We're going Cardinals, right? Last year to Oakland.
Yeah, so actually I befriended Mark from last year. And so I sent him a handful of photos and said, which one do you want on a card? And this is the one that he picked. So that's kind of cool, like that he's involved. From a big picture, it's always been kind of stencil, spray paint, graffiti inspired art on canvas. A lot of what I do started by either like copying the greats that I looked up to, like literally looking at a Shepard Fairey painting and trying to like break down how is that done, and then trying to like replicate that type of stuff into whatever I want to paint. Also like watching YouTube videos. Like I didn't go to art school, so I had to teach myself, and like a lot of that was literally watching YouTube videos that maybe only had 100 views, but it's like, here's how I cut a stencil, and it's some dude in Texas, like in his basement, talking through how he does it, and taking little tiny bits from any different artist that I can find, and then just repetition of just doing it thousands and thousands of times at this point to like come up with my own style. I have every baseball card printed from '85 to like '92, which was when we were going to the A's games and collecting everything, which is totally junk wax era, but they're like sealed sets we still have. Before Topps reached out to me, I had been doing art for athletes and painted probably 250 of them for the athletes themselves. And like specifically Topps was something that I was interested in getting involved with, because I just wanted to take my art beyond painting one thing, giving it to one person, and finding the next client. And like it was right around that time that Jeff reached out to me. He filled out the contact form on my website because he had seen the work that I did from the PLL. And like most of those emails that you get are like spam. So I like wasn't 100% sure if it was real, but I replied back and we set up a call, and he told me about 2020, and it was perfect timing for like the direction I wanted to go with my career.
You're a veteran here, right? Project 2020. Is there anything you learned
Yeah.
that affected your approach this year?
I love to work big, and designing art for a 3.5 by 2.5 inch card is just a different mindset that I had never really been conscious of. And so I think that the process of even designing the portraits themselves, I think a lot of the cards that I made for 2020 were experimental to see how that would transition to the small format. And after doing that 20 times within that project and then moving on to Project 70, I have a lot better idea of what's important to communicate in the painting. And so ironically, when I switched from Project 2020 to 70, I made my paintings bigger, but I like simplified the figures a little bit. I just think that they translate better to cards.
Other big difference being you choosing players this year. What is that process like for you? How do you go about choosing?
So there's a couple factors that I'm looking at, and neither of those are print runs, which is what I was chasing last year. And so this year I'm looking for either A, like underrepresented players, underrepresented teams, just to try and have a little bit more diversity in the set. And then also it gives me an opportunity to like tap into those personal stories and experiences that I had as a kid, like with Brooks Robinson, which is why on the chase card, I'm literally on the card, because that's me and Brooks, which is cool. And same with like the Bobby V card is because of some fun childhood experiences with Bobby. So it's just fun this year. I'm a lot less dialed into the sales and just more just about like the community and having fun. So once the subject is picked, it's choosing the photo, and sometimes like with Brooks, I was able to use something from like, literally my dad took that photo when I was 4 and we were at spring training, and he took it probably on a little film camera. Once the photo's picked, stencils are kind of prepped digitally in Photoshop first, and that's kind of where the simplification comes in, and just coming up with consistent style across the cards, and also something that is gonna shrink down to 3 inches. And yeah, print them out full size. I paint all the originals 30 inches by 40. The painting process is usually pretty quick. It's like a day. I've really kind of got that like process down to a science of executing the physical painting on the canvas and then photographing it and sending it to you guys and getting it printed. Man, I wouldn't change anything. So I might just go back to my younger self and be like, you're on the right path. And that's like a really fun place to be. Obviously, I've made like a lot of mistakes and things that if I could go back and know something different or have some different skill set, I could have had a different outcome. But I think that all of the outcomes, even the ones that weren't seemingly most favorable at the time, have kind of like got me to where I'm at now, and I wouldn't change it for the world, man. There's nobody that I would trade places with, which is kind of a special place to be. Yeah, he was like a lawyer. And he was like there like at camp. Like adult camp. Is that like adult summer camp basically for f***ing baseball hardcores? Our tree has arrived. Yeah, I mean, we'll edit it. We'll put it inside real quick. Pretty tropical. Thanks, bro. Cool. See you guys soon.
I am Brittany Palmer.
It's King Saladin.
This is Gregory Siff.
And I'm here with my homies from Tops.
And this is Project70.
Project70.
Project70. Meet the artist.
Meet the artist. I don't need a wave.
Stay in school.